Hello, welcome again to another edition of the Communicator video blog conducted by the Institute of Nuclear Materials Management. My name is Logan Scott. I'm the Deputy Director of the Communications Committee within INMM, and I am pleased today to get to interview and have a conversation with one of our newly minted fellows of the Institute, Ms. Therese Renis. Therese, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure to get to talk with you today. As a newly minted fellow in the Institute, we're really excited to have you and to kind of get your perspective on a few things, both current events and just to talk to you and get a little bit of perspective on your career and your accolades throughout the entire thing. But for our viewers to start off, Therese, I kind of want to give the floor to you and have you explain a little bit about your own biography, or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you. For those who don't know me well, my specialty is safeguards. I've been working in nuclear safeguards for about 38 years or so. Most recently, I've been at the IAEA for 30 years. I started as a safeguards inspector, and I spent most of my time in operations divisions. I was also senior inspector, section head in operations, but also I've had an opportunity to be an advisor to the head of the safeguards department during my career. In the last 10 years, I've spent in the division of concepts and planning, which is a very exciting place to be. Before I joined the IAEA, actually the opportunity for the IAEA was presented to me through INMM. That's where I found out about it. But I worked in safeguards in Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I was hired there because I have an operations research background, and I was modeling safeguard systems to evaluate how effective they were, especially against insider threat at nuclear facilities. And so it was just a natural transition. And once I came to the IAEA, I stayed. And for those who don't know me well, I just retired in June of this year, and I'm still enjoying Vienna in Austria.
Congratulations on the retirement. I hope congratulations. Some people, when they retire, become more busy. I don't know if that's the case for you, but hopefully there's some rest and relaxation involved with the retirement.
Well, that's the first thing I'm doing, visiting friends and family and enjoying the summer.
Well deserved, for sure. It is a fine summer in Vienna. As you've had you said 38 years in this field, more or less, correct?
That's correct.
And you've had a long career in this world. How has the job or mission changed with the safeguards community? How has it kind of changed over the course of your career? When you started, you said you were at kind of the national lab setting and you moved to the IAEA, not kind of giving more of a US or an IAEA perspective, but just on a broad overview. How did the world of safeguards change over that 38 years?
Well, I have to say that the first 8 years were in the US, but I came to the IAEA in 1991, and that was exactly at the time where the Iraq case was presented. And so I felt very fortunate to be sort of on the front lines. I wasn't working with Iraq, but I also had the opportunity to work on the early implementation of the additional protocol, and then looking at other aspects of strengthening safeguards. And that's always stuck with me because that wasn't just a turning point, but ever since that time, the IAEA and the international community has been facing more and different challenges. For example, there was additional protocol I talked about. We found that the small quantities protocol needed to be changed to give us more authority in some states. There's been security issues where it's been difficult for inspectors to go to certain locations because of conflict in regions. Also, most recently, the COVID situation made it very difficult for inspections and traveling. So I don't think there's like an endpoint to the number of challenges that can arise. And it's always been something different, but I think that's what keeps it exciting as well, the area of safeguards.
Yes, thank you, Therese, for that answer. And, safeguards is a continuously evolving field. And like you said, you began in 91 with one of the most interesting times in the safeguards, probably the history, with the Iran case that arose. And you talked about how COVID has impacted things in, the more recent future, like with the INMM SARTA joint meeting. We got to host 1,000 people to see you be, inducted to the class of fellows. So again, congratulations on that. I kind of want to go towards the end of your career. You said you recently retired. And again, congratulations on that. As you move into a different role from the active world and the safeguards from an employed standpoint to more of a consulting or advisory role, what do you really hope to accomplish?
Well, that's a good question. As you said, at the moment, I've just been relaxing, but I have to note that during my career, and especially my most recent career as a director in the IAEA, some of colleagues in different organizations, including related to safeguards, disarmament, and so forth, have asked me to participate or collaborate with them in certain areas because of my safeguards expertise. It was impossible to do that while I was working because of my affiliation. And so I'm hoping some of those opportunities may arise in the future. I'm trying to brush up a bit more on other aspects of non-proliferation to see how safeguards may fit with that and to use my particular expertise. I'm not necessarily looking for another job or a consultancy, or unless it uses my particular expertise that I've built up over the years.
I'd say quite a distinguished expertise as well. So I would imagine the phone will ring at some point. And as a retiree, you get to choose which calls you select, and hopefully in the future you'll continue to be involved with INMM. I know that that's been a big thing in your career, is your involvement with INMM. It's a great community of professionals, and that's really who's we're getting to talk to today, is that community. We all work together to accomplish a specific mission. Now, as a fellow of the Institute, I kind of want to ask, what impact did the Institute have on your career as a whole?
Well, I have to say that I attended, especially when I started in safeguards, in domestic safeguards in the US, I attended the annual meeting every year. And it was an excellent opportunity to find out what others were doing and also to share what I was doing and what my colleagues were doing from Livermore. And it also helped me to maintain contacts over the years. So I went every year for 8 years, and then I moved to Vienna. It wasn't so easy to attend the annual meetings from Vienna because more and more limitations were put on attending meetings in person. I think this is an important development that now more of my colleagues, including myself, can attend virtually. Makes it easier to do. But when I was in Vienna and couldn't go very frequently, when I did go to INMM, it was like old home week. I met again with colleagues that I'd collaborated with over the years, and I could keep abreast of some of the developments in the area of safeguards. And, sometimes, and I think oftentimes, there's more synergies created because especially the way the world works now, including in academia and even in industry, the laboratories, collaboration between different disciplines is so important to really forward the work of safeguards. And there always will be areas where improvements can be done. But it's also a way to be able to mentor others, establish friendships, and find what new opportunities are available.
No, it is always kind of a fun experience each year, and the virtual ones are, in my opinion, very important moving forward. To be able to engage with people around the world, whether the meeting is in the United States or like it will be in Vienna in 2023, we'll come to you. So you probably won't have to go that far. But I do think that it's a really good way of expanding the community of safeguards in a world that's consistently shrinking. And when communication allows us to get across the world in a few matter of seconds, as you and I discuss things from 6 time zones apart, I think that that's a really, really interesting thing. But when you talked about you got to go back kind of to this when you got to come in person to INMM, it was almost like a homecoming sort of thing. Is there a specific moment or memory that sticks out about your involvement with INMM? A fun story that you can kind of share with our community and there can be several. I know you've had, again, many years at this, but is there one little kind of memory that you always have cherished about your involvement with INMM?
Well, there's so many. It's hard to just pick individual ones, but I can give you some examples of some of them. I mean, even before I came to Vienna, I helped to organize some of the annual meetings. And back in those days, there could be a fun run or golf, or I remember once in New Orleans, I organized a paddle boat trip. So dinner and drinks on a paddle boat for the INMM, whoever wanted to go from the INMM. We organized buses and we went and were sipping mint juleps and enjoying each other's company. And that was really nice. And then
as one does in New Orleans, my family is from there. So I'm glad you planned that. It's a true experience.
And then when I was there, I already knew I was coming to Vienna. And so some of my colleagues who had been to Vienna before, or who knew people who were in Vienna, introduced me to the other colleagues, and that made it all the more easier to come. Also, recently, I met some colleagues that I worked with in Japan, and some of my retired colleagues that also worked with some of the Japanese counterparts, especially, for example, with JNFL, which is a Ricasho reprocessing plant, which I was responsible for at one point of time. And so we had a dinner together. It was a lot of fun, and just caught up on the stories that we had in doing that. But every time I go, I meet people that I've worked with before. We have a meal or have a drink, have a coffee together, and just catch up. It's nice.
It's I'm really excited. Like I said, the virtual experience is really important for outreach, but the in-person experience is great for that personal connection. Getting to talk with people, people you'd never get to talk to. I know we're talking virtually, but hopefully in the future we get to catch up in person, like everybody will, either in Scottsdale or in Vienna over the next coming years. We talked a lot about kind of the past, and I do want to kind of move a little bit forward and look towards the future. With so much experience, with so much of a vision for how safeguards progressed in the past. I'm curious, over the course of your career, if there's one small nugget of advice or a personal axiom that drove you in the day-to-day work as a young professional. I'm always asking this of people that have reached the end of their careers. So was there anything that drove you in the day-to-day, a small axiom, a nugget, a little personal characteristic that you thought really made you stand out?
Well, maybe it's my background in educational background, industrial engineering, operations research. I'm always, the safeguards is very important for international security, but of course, everything can be improved. I always look for ways that things can be improved, and I take personal satisfaction in trying to work on those small things or even large things that could be improved. So it really drives you to work because, if I don't do it, who would? At least bringing ideas forward. I think that's what makes for a rich career, that you really feel you're contributing.
That's amazing. And I do share that perspective with you, that I think a lot of people are big picture things, and there's a lot of people with a huge vision for how things should change. It's the movers and shakers, the doers in the trenches, like you said, that you fix you look at the small things that could contribute here and there that end up making large impact over time. And that's been demonstrated throughout your career. Do you have any advice for the next generation, the younger generation, beginning to embark on their own careers? You've navigated your entire career in a very successful manner. We have a new generation that the world is rapidly changing, and I know that you're getting to see that at the end of your career. Any specific advice for the younger generation like myself and many like me?
Well, I think that there's a variety of different safeguards careers that one could have. Each player is very important. The safeguards inspectors are important, but for any of my colleagues or any of the young people who are in safeguards, I would just say to keep learning, to look for opportunities. Even at the end of my career, and even now, I have recognized that I don't know everything. I need to collaborate with people from a lot of different areas, and I need to continue to learn more. There's just more than any one person can observe. So I would recommend that young people keep looking for opportunities, find what is interesting to them, and navigate in that way, and to collaborate with others.
And I love that the collaboration, like we talked about earlier, the world's a little smaller, and the fact that the safeguards world is always expanding. We have opportunities in other parts of the world that never existed previously. This field is so young, but we're always grabbing more people to come in with us, whether it's in sub-Saharan Africa or the Caribbean or some places like that. I think that there's always an opportunity for collaboration and reaching out a friendly hand. And so kind of with that, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for, all of your achievements throughout your career. But before we go, is there anything that you would like to say to the community as a whole, or is there anything that you'd like to kind of let all the members of the Institute know before we conclude today?
Well, the one thing I think is important, when people look at the INMM, I know I've been on the membership committee and we talk about how much it costs and so forth. I think one has to look broader than that. As I mentioned before, INMM has been invaluable for my career, just to learn more, to make connections, to keep connections. What you're doing now, you're sharing information as well. So I hope that young people will recognize the value of a professional society where you feel like you truly belong and have a home and you get to know the larger community. I hope to continue to support the INMM and all its members. So if anyone wants to reach out to me or has any questions, I welcome it. Please connect with me through the INMM or LinkedIn or whatever.
Whatever communication network we now have at our fingertips, right?
Exactly.
Well, Therese, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for all of your involvement throughout the years within INMM, the IAEA, the national laboratory setting, across all different, in every capacity. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank you very much.